In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and dreams often collided with harsh realities, there was a small cafe named Warm Cup. It wasn't one of those fancy places with overpriced lattes or Instagram-worthy decor. Instead, it was cozy, simple, and filled with the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. For Emily Carter, this cafe was more than just her workplace. It was her lifeline. Emily had been working at Warm Cup for nearly 3 years now. She wasn't new to the grind. She knew how to balance trays laden with steaming cups of coffee, navigate through crowded tables without spilling a drop, and greet customers with a warm smile even when her feet ached from standing all day. At 24, life hadn't exactly handed her a golden ticket. Her father had passed away when she was young, leaving her mother Laura to raise her alone. They'd lived paycheck to paycheck, relying on kindness and sheer determination to get by. But 5 years ago, tragedy struck again. Laura fell ill suddenly and passed away, leaving Emily utterly alone in the world. Since then, Emily had done everything she could to survive. She worked long hours at the cafe, picked up odd jobs here and there, and lived in a tiny apartment that barely qualified as livable. Despite the hardships, she held on to hope. Deep down, she believed that someday things would turn around. Maybe she'd save enough money to attend culinary school, fulfilling her dream of opening her own restaurant someday. Until then, she poured her energy into her work, treating every customer with care, no matter how rude or demanding they might be. One chilly afternoon, as raindrops pattered against the cafe windows and the air carried a faint chill, a man walked in. He stood out immediately, not because he was dripping wet from the rain, he wasn't, but because of his presence. There was something commanding yet understated about him. His tailored suit spoke volumes about his wealth and the way he moved. Exuded confidence. Every eye in the room seemed to follow him as he approached the counter. "Can I help you?" Emily asked politely, forcing a bright smile despite feeling exhausted from her double shift. The man glanced at the menu briefly before ordering a black coffee. His voice was deep and calm, carrying an authority that made people instinctively listen. As Emily punched in his order, she noticed something unusual, a glimpse of a photograph sticking out of his wallet which lay casually on the counter. Curiosity got the better of her and she leaned slightly to get a better look. What she saw made her blood run cold. It was her mother's face. Her hands trembled as she processed what she was seeing. That picture was unmistakably Laura. Her warm smile, the twinkle in her eyes, the same photo Emily kept tucked safely in her bedside drawer. How could this stranger possibly have her mother's picture? And why was it in his wallet? For a moment, Emily forgot where she was. All the noise around her, the chatter of customers, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clinking of spoons, faded into the background. Her mind raced with questions. Was this some kind of cruel prank? Did her mother know this man? Or worse, was there something darker behind this discovery? Summoning her courage, Emily cleared her throat and spoke softly but firmly. "Hi, sir. Excuse me, but why is my mother's picture in your wallet?" The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. The man froze, his fingers pausing mid-reach for his credit card. Slowly, he turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. For a split second, Emily thought she saw a flicker of emotion, shock, guilt, maybe even sadness. But it vanished almost instantly, replaced by a carefully controlled mask. Instead of answering, the man quickly paid for his coffee, grabbed his wallet, and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Emily staring after him, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. Who was he? Why did he have her mother's picture? And most importantly, what connection did he have to her family? As the cafe buzzed back to life around her, Emily felt like she was trapped in a whirlpool of confusion. She replayed the encounter in her mind over and over, searching for clues. Something about the man's reaction told her this wasn't a coincidence. Whatever the reason, it was clear that their meeting wasn't ordinary. Little did she know, this brief interaction would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. That night, unable to shake off the image of the mysterious man or the unsettling sight of her mother's photograph in his wallet, Emily found herself digging through old boxes in her cramped apartment. She pulled out dusty photo albums, faded letters, and anything else that might hold answers. Her mother had always been private about certain aspects of her past, often brushing off Emily's questions with vague responses. Now, more than ever, Emily wished she had pushed harder for details. Among the clutter, she stumbled upon a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local Boy Makes Good, From Rags to Riches, Alexander Sterling's Inspiring Journey." Below the article was a black-and-white photo of a younger Alexander Sterling, handsome, determined, and eerily familiar. Could this be the same man who had visited the cafe earlier? The resemblance was uncanny. Reading through the article, Emily learned about Alexander's rise from poverty to becoming one of the wealthiest men in the country. The piece highlighted his humble beginnings, crediting a mysterious benefactor who believed in him during his darkest days. Though the article didn't name the benefactor, Emily couldn't help but wonder if her mother was somehow involved. Her thoughts spiraled as she tried to connect the dots. Had her mother known Alexander? If so, what was their relationship? Why? Would he carry her picture all these years later? Each question led to another, creating a tangled web of uncertainty. Yet amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. She needed answers. Meanwhile, across town in a luxurious penthouse overlooking Manhattan, Alexander Sterling sat alone in his study, staring blankly at the city lights. The encounter at the cafe replayed, in his mind like a broken record. He hadn't expected to see her, Emily. The resemblance to Laura was uncanny, right down to the curious tilt of her head and the warmth in her voice. Seeing her brought back memories he had spent decades trying to bury. Alexander sighed heavily, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. Guilt gnawed at him, sharp and unrelenting. He had carried Laura's picture with him every day since her passing, a silent reminder of the woman who had changed his life. But now, faced with her daughter, he realized he couldn't keep running from the past. Whatever happened next, he owed it to Laura and to Emily to confront the truth. Little did either of them know, their lives were about to intersect in ways neither could have imagined. The next morning, Emily woke up feeling as though she hadn't slept at all. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, each one pulling her in a different direction. She couldn't stop thinking about the man from the cafe, Alexander Sterling, and the photograph of her mother tucked neatly in his wallet. It wasn't just curiosity gnawing at her. It was something deeper, almost instinctual. She felt like there was a missing piece to her life's puzzle, and Alexander held the key. After a restless night spent going through old boxes and rereading the newspaper article about Alexander's rise to fame, Emily decided she needed to dig further. If her mother had been connected to someone so important, why had she never mentioned him? Laura had always been open with Emily, sharing stories about her childhood, her struggles, and even some of the hardships she faced raising Emily alone. But this connection to Alexander Sterling was completely uncharted territory. Determined to find answers, Emily returned to the cafe that afternoon for her shift. Though she tried to focus on her work, her thoughts kept drifting back to Alexander. Who was he really? What did he mean to her mother? And why had he left so abruptly after she confronted him? The more she thought about it, the more certain she became that their meeting wasn't a coincidence. Something tied them together, and she was determined to uncover the truth. As fate would have it, Alexander didn't make her wait long. Later, that evening, just as Emily was cleaning off tables and preparing to close up, the door chimed softly. She looked up, half expecting another customer rushing in for a last-minute coffee. Instead, she saw him, Alexander Sterling. He stood in the doorway looking slightly hesitant but resolute. His suit was impeccable, his posture confident, yet there was an underlying tension in his expression. Emily froze for a moment, unsure how to react. Part of her wanted to demand answers right then and there, while another part felt wary of letting him back into her space. Before she could say anything, Alexander stepped forward, his voice calm, but tinged with urgency. "Emily," he began, "I owe you an explanation." She crossed her arms over her chest, trying to appear composed despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. You do, she replied evenly. Who are you? And why do you have my mother's picture? Alexander nodded slowly, as if bracing himself for what was to come. Can we sit down somewhere quiet? This isn't a conversation I want to have standing here. Reluctantly, Emily agreed. They moved to a corner table near the window, where the soft glow of the streetlights filtered through the glass. The cafe was empty now, save for the two of them, and the silence between them felt heavy with unspoken words. Once they were seated, Alexander took a deep breath before beginning. Your mother, Laura, she saved my life. Emily blinked, caught off guard by the statement. What do you mean? She asked cautiously. Alexander leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant, as memories flooded back. It was years ago, long before I became, well, who I am today. I was a struggling college student, working multiple jobs just to stay afloat. One winter, things got especially tough. I was living in a tiny apartment with no heat, barely scraping by on ramen noodles and cheap coffee. That's when I found your mother's diner. He paused, his lips curving into a faint smile at the memory. Laura ran a little place called Laura's Corner. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and welcoming. She noticed me coming in every day, ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. At first I thought she pitied me, but then I realized she genuinely cared. She started slipping extra food onto my plate without charging me. Sometimes she'd pack leftovers for me to take home. When I thanked her, she just smiled and said, "You'll pay me back someday by doing great things." Emily listened, intently, her heart swelling with pride at the image of her mother helping someone in need. Laura had always been kind-hearted, but hearing about her generosity toward a stranger touched Emily deeply. Alexander continued, his tone growing softer. But it wasn't just food she gave me. It was belief. Belief that I could succeed even when I doubted myself. She encouraged me to pursue my dreams, to keep pushing forward no matter how hard things got. Without her support, I don't think I would have made it. Tears pricked at the corners of Emily's eyes as she absorbed his words. So, you knew my mom, she said quietly. That still doesn't explain why you have her picture. Alexander hesitated, his jaw tightening as if wrestling with emotions he'd buried long ago. After I graduated and started my company, I wanted to repay Laura for everything she'd done for me. I offered her money, but she refused. She told me the best way to thank her was to use my success to help others. A few months later, I learned she had passed away unexpectedly. I was devastated. I tried to track down her family, to let them know how much she meant to me, but I couldn't find any records. Over time, I convinced myself that maybe it was better to leave the past alone. His voice cracked slightly as he added, I kept her picture with me because she reminded me of where I came from and why I worked so hard. Every time I looked at it, I remembered her kindness and her faith in me. I never imagined I'd meet you, Emily. Seeing you yesterday, it brought everything rushing back. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Emily stared at Alexander, torn between disbelief and gratitude. Here was a man who had carried her mother's memory with him for decades, honoring her in ways she couldn't have imagined. Yet a part of her still struggled to reconcile his story with the reality of her own life. If her mother had meant so much to him, why hadn't he reached out to her sooner? Why hadn't he helped her when she needed it most? Sensing her hesitation, Alexander sighed. I know this must be overwhelming for you. I can't change the past or undo the mistakes I've made, but I want to make things right. If you'll let me, I'd like to get to know you, and maybe in some small way, honor your mother's legacy together. Emily didn't respond immediately. Her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. On one hand, she wanted to believe him, to trust that his intentions were genuine. On the other hand, years of hardship had taught her to be cautious. Trust wasn't something she gave easily, especially to someone who seemed worlds apart from her own reality. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. I need time to process all of this. You say my mom meant a lot to you, but I don't even know you. For now, I need to think. Alexander nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Of course. Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm here if you want to talk or if you need anything." With that, he stood up, leaving a business card on the table before walking out of the cafe. As the door closed behind him, Emily sat there staring at the card in silence. Her mother's influence had reached far beyond what she ever imagined, touching the life of a man who now shaped the world in ways she could scarcely comprehend. Over the next few days, Emily wrestled with her emotions. She replayed Alexander's words in her mind, analyzing every detail. Was he telling the truth? Could she really trust him? And if she did, what would that mean for her future? One evening, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Emily came to a decision. Whether or not she trusted Alexander fully, she owed it to herself and to her mother to learn more. After all, Laura had always taught her to approach life with an open heart and a willingness to grow. Maybe this unexpected twist of fate was her chance to do just that. Little did she know, accepting Alexander's offer would lead her down a path of healing, discovery, and transformation, one that would bring her closer to understanding not only her mother's legacy, but also her own potential. Over the next few weeks, Emily found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Her initial skepticism about Alexander Sterling slowly began to soften as she allowed herself to consider the possibility that his story might be true. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how much her mother had always believed in helping others without expecting anything in return. Laura's kindness was legendary, and if she had seen potential in a struggling young man like Alexander, it made sense that she would go out of her way to support him. Still, trusting someone like Alexander didn't come easily to Emily. He was a billionaire CEO, a man who lived in a world so far removed from hers that it seemed almost surreal. How could they possibly bridge the gap between their vastly different lives? And even if he truly wanted to make amends, what did that mean for her? Would accepting his help feel like charity? Or worse, would it somehow diminish the sacrifices her mother had made? Despite her doubts, Emily decided to take small steps. She started by texting him one evening, simply thanking him for sharing his story. To her surprise, he responded almost immediately, expressing gratitude for her willingness to reach out. Their messages were brief at first, polite exchanges about work, weather, and other trivial topics, but gradually they began opening up more. Alexander shared anecdotes about her mother, painting a vivid picture of Laura as a woman full of warmth, wisdom, and humor. Hearing these stories brought tears to Emily's eyes but also filled her with pride. It was comforting to know that her mother's spirit had touched someone else's life so profoundly. Their conversations eventually led to another meeting, this time outside the cafe. Alexander invited Emily to dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant downtown. Though hesitant, she agreed, telling herself it was just another step toward understanding the connection between them. When she arrived, dressed in her best outfit, a simple yet elegant dress borrowed from a coworker, Alexander greeted her warmly, his demeanor relaxed yet respectful. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, they talked for hours, delving deeper into their shared history. Alexander spoke candidly about the guilt he'd carried since Laura's death. "I should have done more to find you," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "But I convinced myself that maybe staying away was better. I didn't want to intrude on your life or bring up painful memories." Emily nodded, understanding where he was coming from. "It's not easy losing someone you love," she said softly. "For years I felt like I was searching for pieces of my mom everywhere. In old photos, in songs she used to sing, in recipes she taught me. But now, hearing about her through you makes me feel closer to her again." Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Alexander wasn't pushy or overbearing. Instead, he approached their relationship with patience and sincerity. He offered to help Emily financially, suggesting ways he could ease some of the burdens she'd been carrying alone for so long. At first, she resisted, fearing it would create an imbalance between them. But when he framed it as a way to honor Laura's memory, she reluctantly accepted. One of the first things Alexander did was pay off Emily's mounting student loan debt, a weight she hadn't realized had been crushing her until it was lifted. He also helped her secure a spot in a prestigious culinary program she'd once dreamed of attending, but never thought possible. Your mom believed in education, he explained. She'd want you to chase your dreams. Though grateful, Emily struggled with feelings of inadequacy. She worried that accepting his generosity made her look weak or dependent. But Alexander reassured her, reminding her that Laura's influence extended beyond material gifts. It was about creating opportunities for growth and happiness. As months passed, their relationship evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. For Alexander, Emily became a source of redemption, a chance to heal old wounds and reconnect with the woman who had shaped his destiny. For Emily, he became a mentor, a confidant, and perhaps most importantly, a link to the mother she missed dearly. Their interactions weren't without challenges, however. There were moments when Emily questioned whether she was doing the right thing, especially when faced with judgmental comments from friends or co-workers who misunderstood their dynamic. Some assumed Alexander was trying to buy her loyalty, while others accused her of using him for personal gain. These criticisms stung, but Emily chose to focus on the truth. This wasn't about money or power. It was about honoring her mother's legacy and building a meaningful connection. One particularly poignant moment occurred during a visit to Laura's Corner, the diner her mother had once owned. Though it had changed hands several times over the years, the building still stood, its faded sign a testament to Laura's hard work and dedication. Standing outside with Alexander, Emily felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. "This is where it all started," Alexander said quietly, his gaze fixed on the building. "Where your mom gave me hope when I had none." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she imagined her mother bustling around inside, serving customers with her trademark smile. "She loved this place," Emily murmured. It wasn't just a job, it was her passion. Inspired by the visit, Emily decided to channel her emotions into action. With Alexander's encouragement, she began brainstorming ideas for her own restaurant, a tribute to her mother's memory. She envisioned a cozy space filled with laughter, delicious food, and a sense of community, much like Laura's Corner. Alexander offered to invest in her dream, not as a businessman, but as a partner who genuinely believed in her vision. Together, they worked tirelessly to bring the project to life. Alexander handled the logistics, securing permits, negotiating contracts, and managing finances, while Emily poured her heart into designing the menu and decor. They spent countless hours discussing every detail, from the color of the walls to the type of music that would play in the background. Through it all, their partnership blossomed into a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and admiration. As the grand opening approached, Emily couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come. Just a year ago, she had been a struggling waitress burdened by debt and uncertainty. Now she was standing on the brink of realizing her lifelong dream, surrounded by people who cared about her, not because of what she had, but because of who she was. On the night before the big event, Emily sat alone in her apartment staring at the photograph of her mother she kept on her nightstand. "Mom," she whispered, "I wish you were here to see this. You'd be proud." In that quiet moment, she realized something profound. Her journey wasn't just about finding answers or fulfilling dreams. It was about embracing the connections that defined her life. Her mother's kindness had set everything in motion, bringing her and Alexander together in ways neither of them could have predicted. And though Laura was no longer physically present, her spirit lived on in every choice Emily made, every laugh she shared, and every dish she prepared. The next morning, as Emily stood behind the counter of her newly opened restaurant, aptly named Laura's Table, she felt a deep sense of peace. This wasn't just a business. It was a celebration of love, resilience, and the enduring power of human connection. The grand opening of Laura's Table was a day Emily would remember for the rest of her life. From the moment she unlocked the door and flipped the sign to open, the restaurant buzzed with energy. The space was warm and inviting, just as Emily had envisioned, a cozy blend of rustic charm and modern elegance. Wooden tables gleamed under soft pendant lights, while framed photographs of Laura adorned the walls, each one capturing a different facet of her vibrant personality. In the corner, a small plaque read, "Dedicated to Laura Carter, whose love and kindness inspired it all." As customers trickled in, Emily moved from table to table, greeting everyone with genuine warmth. She introduced herself, shared stories about her mother, and explained the inspiration behind the menu. Every dish was a tribute to Laura: her famous lasagna, her buttery scones, her hearty chicken soup. Even the desserts carried a personal touch, like the apple pie that had been Emily's favorite as a child. Alexander arrived later in the evening, dressed casually but impeccably in a dark sweater and slacks. He lingered near the entrance for a moment, watching Emily interact with patrons. There was a quiet pride in his eyes as he observed how effortlessly she commanded the room, her smile lighting up every corner. When their gazes finally met, Emily waved him over, her expression a mix of excitement and gratitude. "You made it," she said, pulling him into a quick hug before stepping back. "I'm so glad you're here." "I wouldn't miss this for anything," Alexander replied sincerely. "This place, it's incredible, Emily. Your mom would be so proud." His words brought tears to her eyes, but she blinked them away, determined to stay composed. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. I couldn't have done this without you." Alexander shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. This is your dream, not mine. All I did was help clear the path." Though his tone was humble, Emily knew better. Without his support, both financial and emotional, she might never have found the courage to pursue her passion. But more than that, his presence in her life had given her something she hadn't realized she needed: a sense of belonging. For years she'd felt adrift, carrying the weight of her mother's absence alone. Now she had someone who understood her pain and celebrated her triumphs alongside her. As the night wore on, Alexander mingled with guests, sharing stories about Laura and marveling at how much Emily reminded him of her. People listened intently, captivated by the tale of a struggling student turned billionaire CEO and the woman who had believed in him when no one else did. By the end of the evening, the room was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and heartfelt conversations. It felt less like a business launch and more like a family reunion. After the last customer left and the staff began cleaning up, Emily sank into a chair, exhausted but exhilarated. Alexander joined her, handing her a glass of sparkling water. "How are you feeling?" he asked gently. "Tired," she admitted with a laugh, "but happy. Really, really happy." He smiled, leaning back in his chair. "You deserve it. You've worked so hard for this." Emily nodded, taking a sip of water as she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Opening Laura's table wasn't just about achieving a lifelong goal. It was about healing old wounds and forging new connections. Through this process, she had come to see Alexander not as a distant benefactor but as a true friend, and perhaps even a father figure. Though their relationship had started with uncertainty and mistrust, it had blossomed into something deeply meaningful. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. Some people couldn't understand why a billionaire would take such an interest in a young waitress. Whispers followed them wherever they went, fueled by assumptions and misconceptions. Emily tried not to let it bother her, but occasionally the criticism weighed heavily on her mind. One afternoon, as they sat together in the restaurant going over finances, Emily voiced her concerns. "Do you ever feel like people are judging us? Like they think I'm using you or, I don't know, taking advantage of our connection?" Alexander set down his pen and looked at her thoughtfully. "Of course they do," he said matter-of-factly. "People will always speculate when they see two individuals from vastly different backgrounds working closely together. But what matters isn't what they think, it's what we know to be true." "And what's that?" Emily asked quietly. "That we're honoring your mother's legacy," he replied. "She taught me the value of kindness and generosity. Now through you, I have the chance to pass those lessons forward. That's not charity, it's continuity." His words resonated deeply with Emily, easing some of the lingering guilt she still carried. She realized that accepting help wasn't a sign of weakness. It was an acknowledgement of strength. By allowing Alexander into her life, she had opened herself up to growth, learning, and transformation. Over time, their partnership evolved beyond mentorship. Alexander became a constant source of encouragement, cheering her on during challenging times and celebrating her victories, big and small. Whether it was troubleshooting supply chain issues, brainstorming marketing strategies, or simply offering advice on managing stress, he approached every task with unwavering dedication, and Emily, in turn, inspired him to reconnect with his roots, reminding him of the importance of humility and gratitude. Their bond deepened further during a weekend trip to the countryside, where Emily invited Alexander to visit the cabin her mother had loved so dearly. Nestled among towering trees and rolling hills, the cabin was a peaceful retreat, a place where Laura had often gone to recharge and reflect. As they explored the property together, Emily shared cherished memories of summers spent fishing in the nearby lake, evenings roasting marshmallows by the fire, and mornings waking up to birdsong. For Alexander, the experience was bittersweet. Walking through the cabin, he could almost picture Laura bustling around, humming a tune as she prepared breakfast or tidied up. He felt closer to her than ever before, grateful for the opportunity to step into her world, even if only briefly. On the drive back to the city, Emily glanced at Alexander, noticing the wistful look on his face. "What are you thinking about?" she asked curiously. "Your mom," he admitted. "And how lucky I was to know her. She didn't just change my life, Emily. She shaped it. Everything I've achieved, every decision I've made, has been influenced by her belief in me." Emily reached over and placed a hand on his arm. "She believed in me too," she said softly, "even when I didn't believe in myself." They shared a quiet moment, united by their love for Laura and the profound impact she had on both their lives. Though she was gone, her presence remained palpable, a guiding force that continued to inspire and connect them. Back in the city, Emily threw herself into running Laura's table, pouring her heart into every detail. Word of mouth spread quickly, and soon the restaurant became a local favorite, known not only for its delicious food but also for its welcoming atmosphere. Customers returned again and again, drawn by the sense of community Emily cultivated. Regulars greeted her by name, complimenting her cooking and sharing stories of their own families. Each interaction reinforced her belief that food had the power to bring people together, to nourish not just bodies but souls. Meanwhile, Alexander took pride in watching Emily flourish. Seeing her confidence grow and her dreams materialize filled him with a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years. He had spent decades building an empire, yet nothing compared to the joy of witnessing Emily honor her mother's legacy in such a tangible way. One evening, as they sat side by side reviewing the restaurant's progress, Alexander turned to Emily with a reflective smile. "You know," he said, "when I first saw you at the cafe, I thought fate had played a cruel joke on me. Meeting you forced me to confront all the regrets I'd buried for so long. But now I realize it was a gift, a second chance to make things right." Emily looked at him, her eyes shining with emotion. "It feels like that for me too," she confessed. "I spent so many years wondering about my mom, trying to piece together who she was outside of being my parent. Getting to know you has helped me see her in a whole new light. As a person, not just as my mom." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, savoring the moment. Neither of them could have predicted how their lives would intertwine, but neither would trade it for anything. Together they had built something beautiful, not just a successful business, but a lasting bond rooted in love, respect, and shared history. As the months passed, Emily and Alexander continued to support each other in ways large and small. They faced challenges, celebrated victories, and navigated the complexities of their unique relationship with patience and understanding. Through it all, they remained united by a common purpose: to honor Laura's memory and carry forward the values she embodied. In doing so, they discovered something unexpected: a renewed sense of hope. For Emily, it was the knowledge that she could overcome adversity and achieve her dreams. For Alexander, it was the realization that redemption was possible even after years of regret. Together they proved that sometimes the most unlikely encounters can lead to the most extraordinary outcomes. And as Laura's table flourished, becoming a cornerstone of the community, Emily knew one thing for certain. Her mother's spirit lived on, not just in the recipes she served or the stories she told, but in the connections she fostered and the lives she touched. Months turned into a year, and Laura's table became more than just a restaurant. It was a sanctuary. People came not only for the food, but for the warmth and sense of belonging it offered. Emily had poured her heart into every detail, from the handwritten notes on the menus to the cozy nooks where strangers often struck up conversations and left as friends. The restaurant buzzed with life, laughter, and stories shared over steaming plates of lasagna or slices of apple pie. It was exactly what Emily had envisioned, a tribute to her mother's love and kindness. For Alexander, watching Emily thrive was nothing short of miraculous. He saw how she transformed challenges into opportunities, how she handled stress with grace, and how she inspired those around her. Employees adored her, customers raved about her. She wasn't just running a business. She was creating a legacy that honored Laura in the most beautiful way possible. And though he tried to stay in the background, offering guidance only when asked, Alexander couldn't help but feel proud of the role he'd played in helping her get there. One crisp autumn morning, Emily arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual. The air carried the scent of fallen leaves and sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden patterns on the wooden floors. As she unlocked the door and stepped inside, she noticed an envelope propped against the cash register. Curious, she picked it up and opened it. Inside was a letter written in Alexander's unmistakable handwriting. "Dear Emily," it began, "I hope this note finds you well. I wanted to take a moment to express my gratitude for allowing me to be part of your journey, for trusting me despite our differences, and for reminding me of the importance of connection and compassion. Your mother gave me a second chance at life, and now, through you, I've been given another gift. The opportunity to heal and grow alongside someone who embodies everything she stood for." Emily paused, her eyes misting over as she read on. "I know I can never repay what Laura did for me, but I believe we've done something equally meaningful. We've kept her spirit alive. Through Laura's table, her generosity continues to ripple outward, touching countless lives. That is a testament to your strength, creativity, and unwavering determination." The letter went on to explain that Alexander had decided to step back slightly from his involvement in the restaurant. "You don't need me hovering over your shoulder anymore," he wrote with a touch of humor. "You've proven time and again that you're capable of handling anything that comes your way. Besides, I think it's important for you to spread your wings fully, to own this accomplishment without feeling like I'm holding your hand every step of the way." Tears spilled onto the paper as Emily read the final lines. "Please know that I'll always be here if you need me, whether it's for advice, support, or just a friendly chat. You've become family to me, Emily, and nothing will ever change that. Thank you for letting me share in this incredible chapter of your life. With admiration and affection, Alexander." By the time she finished reading, Emily was crying openly, overwhelmed by emotion. For so long, she had doubted whether she deserved Alexander's help, or worse, feared that accepting it would make her dependent on him. But now she understood that his support had never been about control or obligation. It had been about love and respect, a desire to honor Laura's memory by empowering her daughter to succeed. That evening, after closing the restaurant, Emily called Alexander. When he answered, his voice sounded hesitant, almost as if he expected her to be upset. Instead, she surprised him with heartfelt gratitude. "I got your letter," she said softly. "Thank you for everything, not just for helping me build Laura's table, but for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. You've given me so much more than financial support. You've given me confidence, hope, and a family I thought I'd lost forever." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Alexander spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Emily, you've earned every bit of success you've achieved. All I did was remind you of what you already knew deep down, that you're extraordinary." They talked for a while longer, sharing memories of Laura and reflecting on how far they'd come. By the end of the call, Emily felt lighter, as if a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying had finally lifted. Alexander's decision to step back wasn't a rejection, it was an affirmation of trust, a vote of confidence in her abilities. In the weeks that followed, Emily embraced her independence with renewed vigor. She took charge of decision-making, tackled problems head-on, and continued to innovate, introducing new dishes and hosting community events that brought people together. Though Alexander wasn't physically present as much as before, their bond remained strong. They still met regularly for coffee or dinner, discussing everything from business strategies to personal aspirations. Their relationship had evolved into something rare and precious, a partnership built on mutual respect and genuine care. One chilly December evening, as snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, Emily hosted a special event at Laura's table, a holiday feast for families in need. It was her idea, inspired by her mother's lifelong commitment to giving back. Alexander joined her, lending a hand in the kitchen and mingling with guests. Together they served hot meals, handed out warm blankets, and listened to stories of hardship and resilience. As the night drew to a close, Emily stood outside the restaurant, watching as volunteers packed up leftovers and cleaned the space. Alexander approached her, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Here," he said, handing her one. "You look like you could use this." She smiled gratefully, wrapping her hands around the mug. "Thanks. Tonight was amazing. Mom would have loved it." "She absolutely would have," Alexander agreed. "And she'd be so proud of you, Emily. Look at what you've created. Not just a successful restaurant, but a place where people feel seen and cared for." Emily nodded, gazing out at the quiet street blanketed in snow. "It's funny," she mused. "When I first met you, I thought you were just some rich guy with my mom's picture in his wallet. I had no idea how much you'd change my life or how much we'd end up meaning to each other." Alexander chuckled softly. "Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? I certainly didn't expect to find a piece of Laura in you, or to rediscover parts of myself I thought were long gone." They stood there in companionable silence, sipping their hot chocolate and watching the snow fall. In that moment, Emily felt a profound sense of peace. Her journey hadn't been easy, but it had led her to where she belonged, with a thriving restaurant, a supportive community, and a man who had become like a father to her. Most importantly, she had found a way to keep her mother's spirit alive, ensuring that Laura's kindness and generosity would continue to ripple outward for years to come. Later that night, as Emily locked up the restaurant and prepared to head home, she stopped to glance at the plaque dedicated to her mother. Running her fingers over the engraved words, she whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Then, with a smile lighting up her face, she turned off the lights and stepped out into the snowy night, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Though the road had been long and winding, Emily knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone. She had Alexander, her staff, her friends, and most importantly, the enduring legacy of her mother guiding her every step of the way. Together, they had created something truly special, a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and human connection. And as the snow continued to blanket the city in silence, Emily walked forward with hope in her heart, knowing that the best chapters of her story were yet to come.